Dear friends and fellow sufferers from lockdown, salam alaikum, good afternoon, dobry din. It's a very, very great pleasure to meet you all on the ever subversive 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November with gunpowder, treason and plot. My heavens, if ever there was a time to recall those wonderful children's rhymes, it might be now. But anyway, I'm the Reverend David Parry. This is our trial run for a libertarian-inspired arts gathering each month, and we will extend the length of the show as the months go ahead. We will be inviting guests to come and introduce themselves to a wider audience, speak about an art object that's inspired them personally, you know, to think of freedom, to extend their thoughts on liberty, and why they would recommend that to somebody else. I think that's brief, it's punchy, it's pomo, and it's rather exciting. What we will do first is go to my wonderful partner in crime, Daniele Irandoost, who will introduce you to his art object. Daniele is the founder and curator of TEDxLambeth, the fastest growing, excuse me, TEDx community in the entire country. And he's a bit of a clever dickie. Not only is he doing a doctorate, he's reading for a doctorate at King's College London at the moment on security issues, but he's also a published author at 25. My God, how about that for karma? Daniele, would you mind coming onto the board and speaking about your work?
Well, thank you very much, David, for that introduction. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for this opportunity, especially David. So thank you very much. So I'll be very brief. What's inspired me to, to become a libertarian, as it were, is actually J.S. Mill's book On Liberty. I read On Liberty a few years ago, due to an assignment. And one of the things that really interested me about J.S. Mill's sort of discourse was that, to achieve truth with a capital T, we have to be able to, have the freedom to debate, to discuss ideas, and sort of move towards that sort of the truth with a capital T. That's the only way that we can really understand the world around us, understand the issues, and resolve them. By suppressing ideas, thoughts, it sort of becomes very difficult, if not impossible, to understand the world really. So J.S. Mill, I'll show a picture of the book very quickly, and then I will pass it to the David Parry. So that's John Stuart Mill On Liberty. So thank you very much, David.
I think everybody knows how completely non-techie I am, which is why Daniele needed to be here. I mean, the entire country knows that at this juncture. Also, we're getting reverb, so we couldn't actually do it in the safe spaces we'd have wanted, but I think overall that works. Moving on now to Mr. Neil Watson, who is a journalist, quite an old friend of mine, actually. He used to work for the European Azerbaijan Society magazine, Tayaz. I believe he still works closely with the Azerbaijanis. He's a remarkable man in all sorts of ways. Neil, would you mind telling us about your art object and why you'd recommend it to other people?
Well, thank you for your kind comments, David, and hello to everybody. Well, my art object is probably extending things a little bit because it's not actually an object, it's a film. And it's a film made 1959 called Les 400 Coups. It was the featured directorial debut of Francois Truffaut. And in my view, this actually represents liberty and freedom, both in its form and its content, because Francois Trouveau started off being a critic, and he worked for a magazine called Les Cahiers de Cinéma, where he actually he criticized the tradition of quality that was found in many French films of the 40s and 50s, where everything was very tightly scripted, shot on studio sets. There was a lot of very tight editing. There were no longueurs or anything like that that could possibly get in the way of the narrative. So what he did is, with Les Quatre Cents Coups, which is very much a semi-autobiographical story about a boy who in himself is trying to escape his oppressive school life and home life, and actually often does this through the cinema itself. He actually managed to produce a film here which was fundamentally unscripted. It was shot without direct dialogue being recorded, apart from one sequence. And there is many attempts to actually incorporate a sense of spatio-temporal integrality into the film, whereby you do not have a lot of editing going on between different scenes. They uses the widescreen process in a very interesting way, and has a tendency to sort of dolly into the actual most important part of the scene rather than cutting from the long shot to the medium shot to the close-up. And there are many sequences in the film where it's completely non-narrative. You have overviews of the traffic of Paris. There's a sequence where he goes to the fun fair and you just see him going on this centrifuge system. So there's many sequences in this film, and there's also a sequence where a boy sort of disassembles his book that he's writing in at school. It's got nothing to do with the plot at all, but it actually shows, it gives a sense of what these sort of environments are like, and particularly in the school sequences, the lack of attention being paid by the teacher to actually his students. There is a story attached to it in that the boy inadvertently gets sent to the equivalent of Borstal, and then he actually, from which he escapes during a games lesson. And then he runs out to the sea, and there's a freeze frame because this is very much a vignette of life. So I think that the fact that the film was shot so cheaply, it was shot in black and white at a time when colour was kind of taking over, and that it, in many ways, it heralded the Nouvelle Vague, the new wave of French cinema, which actually then had an impact on the new German cinema, and also in national cinemas in many countries where we go towards more free cinema, location shooting, non-professional actors, a high degree of improvisation. A lot of that was attributable to what started around about the same time with this film. So I think it was a very revolutionary film in its own way, and also the character itself represents revolution and freedom and the search for freedom.
Gosh, thank you, Neil. I'm definitely going to see that movie over the weekend, I think. I should explain to our viewers that Neil is also quite an encyclopedist regarding movies and, that type of present-day culture. Absolutely fascinating, Neil. Thank you. I suppose I should put my cards on the table. Apart from being a minister of religion, I'm also the spokesperson for the Libertarian Party UK. But the idea behind these panels, particularly on a day like this, is to extend the appeal of freedom and liberty to as wide a possible audience as we can manage. So I imagine we've got many different political views here, but we're united in a search for greater unity and greater freedom, ever more important in these strange and dark days. Let's move on to Bakhtygul, who is joining us live from Kazakhstan. I mean, not only is she an old friend of mine nowadays, but she's a rising star in her own right. She's a famous literary agent. She does a huge amount of work to promote Kazakh culture across the globe. And she's a good old friend of mine nowadays. My God, yes, I know them from everywhere. What can I say? Bakhtygul, my dear friend, please say something about your art object and why you'd recommend it to a wider audience.
Hello, everyone. Hello, David. I'm very happy to have been presented this great opportunity to talk to you. It is an honor for me to talk about Abai. Why Abai? Because I'm going to talk to show you this book. It is the research work of the professor, Kazakh professor Mekemtas Murzakhmet. He presents here the idea of the doctrine by Abai. The doctrine is called the holistic man. You know, you must be happy with the feelings of great Kazakh poet Abai, because it is presented here. I can show you the books, the poems, and his words presented into English by great English translators. It is exactly presented to the attention of the world when we celebrated 150th anniversary dedicated to his, and it is very helpful, useful thing for you to understand the world of Abai, and exactly what I'd like to accent here. Here, Professor Mekemtas Murzakhmet, in present days, we can count him as #1 Abaiologist. He is trying to find out the right keys to understand the great philosophy by Abai, and then we can find out here the full portrait of the perfect man. You know, chameleon Sonny, we can call it, and it is very easy to understand not only the inner world of the great poet, but we can find out here the historical interconnection of the Turkic doctrines. Begins with Alpir Tonga, and it is in the 7th century BC. Then it is followed by Al-Farabi's intellectual man doctrine. It is based in the 10th century. Then comes Jusuf Balasaguni's generosity doctrine. It is Kotat-Kobilek, the 11th century. Then comes Khoja Ahmed Yassawi's Divan-i Hikmet, Book of Wisdom. It is the 12th and 13th centuries. And then the 19th century, it is the work of Abai's holistic man doctrine. And then the 6th work by Shakarim. It is also very important to find out that it is called Science of Conscience. Here, the professor's great efforts present us a clear picture of understanding the full portrait of a perfect man. This work is right now in Kazakh, but in future, we try to present it in English. Then you might be very happy to understand the main idea of this great work. I would strongly recommend the world to be sure with the directions of this great research work. Thank you to your attention.
Oh, thank you, Bakhtygul. That was sort of absolutely amazing, as usual. Looking forward to seeing you at some point when this madness is over. Moving on to that old reprobate Alan Cox. I don't know. I mean, Alan's a very, very good and old friend of mine. Psychic healer. I mean, and in a very serious sense. That's not meant to sound trivializing. Whatever those mysterious things are, Alan is very rationally and sensibly involved in them. It's unwise to reduce the world to a series of rational assertions. I mean, Alan is a healer, put it that way. He's also a broadcaster and author, and I'd like him on this occasion, because I'll be inviting you all back at some point, not to talk about his recent book, The Life of a Psychic Broadcaster, but about a painting that he personally would recommend and his thoughts about it. Alan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, David. Yeah, it's a painting by an incredible lady named Shinaz Hanslot. You need to know a little bit about her history to understand why this painting means so much to Anne and myself. She got in touch with me going back 8 years ago, and she saw an advertisement in a magazine that I'd been in as an article. Anyway, long story short, we went down to LPUK in London, and so many different things happening to her. But the incredible thing about Shinaz is that your armchair, your settee there, top of her head only came up to the top of the arm. She isn't a dwarf, right? She's in perfect, a body in proportion completely, but she's minute. She's about the height of about a 2-year-old, right? She's in her mid-40s now. She was told that a life expectancy wouldn't even reach 40. And what's remarkable about Shinaz is that she comes from a Muslim family, and she loved to paint and draw, and she used to keep all the drawings underneath her bed, and the family burnt them all.
Oh.
She got a job as a cleaner at university in Leicester, and she talked to the tutor there on the arts side of it. Anyway, she was putting her art out to this tutor, that she'd found out that her family were going to send her to Pakistan to spend the rest of her life basically in some kind of, I don't know what they call them there, like a convent thing, because of her height. In their eyes, she'd brought shame to their family. Anyway, the tutor got in touch with Shinaz's doctor. The doctor actually made Shinaz a ward of court, and actually helped her to escape her family. The tutor got her enrolled in Goldsmith, and she was actually in the same class as, I'm sorry, my mind's gone dead, quite a famous artist. It'll come back to me, I'm sorry. Damien, thank you, Anne. Damien Hirst. Anyway, she was holding an exhibition there, and we'd helped her a lot. So we went down to this exhibition and got this painting there. And after we come away, I said to Anne, I really like that. So I phoned Shinaz up. And I said, I want to buy this painting off you. And she says, okay. So we got down there, and it was all there ready for us. And I got my checkbook out, and she said, oh, no. I'm not having any money off you. £2,100 this painting was. Says, I'm not going to have off you. He says, I can see it means so much to you. It's signed on the back of the painting, actually. And as I'm talking to you, I can see it because it's just up on the left from where I'm sitting. And it's an abstract painting. And people look at it, and everybody sees something different. I see these eyes coming from heaven, and it's almost like a sand dune. I just find it quite fascinating. She almost died, and she was in St Thomas's Hospital I think I've got the right hospital, the one just over the bridge at Westminster, and they saved her life. And she showed them pictures of her work. And I believe it's still there now. If you go into St Thomas's, in the foyer, as you walk in, there is a floor-to-ceiling painting that she actually was commissioned to do, and it's there. She is quite an incredible artist, and she's come over so much in her life. And she's on dialysis every single day at home. She's just, she lives in Pimlico. Incredible lady, incredible.
Oh, thank you. And I mean, two things to respond to that. Never ever use language like Damien Hirst to me, please. I'll cut you off next time. The second thing is we will make the image of the painting available later. We're having trouble downloading it at the minute, but we will make the painting available.
Okay.
Moving on to my last panelist of today. Remember, it's a trial run. We will be doing a show a month, and we'll have much longer in future when I've worked out the tech a bit more. My dear friend Andrew Withers, who was not only the founder of the Libertarian Party UK a while back, he's an historian and a political activist of the First Order, a stalwart man who I'm proud to call a friend. Andrew, what is your art object and why would you recommend it to a wider audience?
Bonjour, je m'appelle Andrew Withers. Je suis en France en ce moment. Oh, sorry, I keep on forgetting myself. I don't know whether you can actually pull it up. I did send it to David yesterday. It is Cromwell and the cavalry before the Battle of Dunbar in 1650. As an activist, I very much believe that my activism and revolutionary fervour is genetic. I don't know whether it looks like it's actually coming up here. Literally before the Battle of Dunbar, for all you historians amongst you, Cromwell had marched north and was outnumbered by the Scots 2-1. Now, the speech that he gave to his cavalry then was, the prospect of defeat, the prospect of retreat does not exist. For me, I have an ancestor whose name is George Withers. He moved in the circle of the court in the 1630s. He was also a poet. You can look him up in the National Biography of Poets, if you wish, George Withers. Literally, his story is actually quite astounding. He lived till he was nearly 90, and he was locked up by just about everybody that was going. He was locked up by James I, he was locked up by Charles I, he was locked up by Cromwell, and he was locked up by Charles II. So anybody who can achieve that and live to the age of 90 is one of my heroes. I have a painting of him hanging over my desk, but I've actually picked this Battle of the Dunbar because this is what, for me, is we all should be about. We should not be keyboard warriors. We should be actually taking our freedom in our hands. Now, in these days, in the English Civil War, men took up arms, and on his standard, he raised a troop of cavalry selling all of his estates, was for king, country, and the law, which he believed in. Now, the king bit was also a bit of a misnomer, because actually, if they say what the parliamentarians were saying is, well, we're not really fighting against the king and being traitors and rebels. What we're really doing is ridding the king of his evil advisors. And this was a myth that carried on right up until January 1649, when they finally decided to lop his head off, having had enough of him. My ancestor lived a long and fruitful life. He was garrison commander of Wareham Castle, and it's a bit shaming, this bit, which I'm actually going to say now, is that he was in charge of quite a substantial force guarding Wareham Castle when two royalists on horses came out of the woods fronting the castle and said, we demand your surrender in the name of the king. We have cannon in the woods, we have infantry, we have cavalry. And he actually surrendered the castle to these two officers, and unfortunately they were the only two royalists there. And so he surrendered a castle for absolutely no reason other than he was hornswoggled. There is a side to me which actually tends to get hornswoggled time and again. But the bit that I'm actually going on to say is that he was handed over to the King's Justices in London, and the Winter Queen, who was Prince Rupert's mother, tried to intervene on his behalf. The one that actually secured his release was another famous poet of his time, who said he begged for George Withers to be spared the gallows or execution, because while George Withers lived, he would not be the worst poet in England. So I'm afraid that's actually emblazoned on our family history. Our family have actually been involved in many, many escapades. We were always on the wrong side of every civil war going, to the point when Gordon Brown committed some atrocity back in, 15 years ago now. I can't even remember what the atrocity was. And that's when myself and 4 colleagues decided to found the Libertarian Party. And we survived. We're almost coming up to outliving UKIP and one of Farage's many, many parties. I think he's just founded another one this week. I'm sure he'll be asked to be the leader. But we've consistently set down an intellectual argument as to why individuals should be free. And for me, that painting of before Dunbar shows an outnumbered group of people, properly armed, properly equipped, properly motivated in the cause of liberty and freedom to actually overcome all comers. So that's one of the paintings that inspires me. And please excuse the COVID beard. I really can't be bothered to shave while we're locked down. Well, we're not even locked down in France, but at the end of the day, nobody's seeing me. I'm not going out anywhere. I'm working on my house. It's been a pleasure to meet you all. A pleasure as usual, David, and with Michaela. And good luck with this venture.
Well, thank you as all. Mon Dieu, thank you as always, Andrew. We were meant to have a 6th guest, Alexei, a young, very literati chum of mine, but we're having trouble getting him through onto the screen. I've no idea why, so I'll contact him.
Audible.
Yeah, but there's something wrong with the connection. So what we're going to do, Alexei, is invite you onto the next show, if that's agreeable.
Ah, fair enough.
It just remains for me to talk about my own choice. I started as a Free Church minister. I went on a long journey of exploration and arrived back as a Free Church minister. There's a story and a half behind that. But curiously, although having a reputation for very serious literature, which I'm rather proud of, I want to talk about a book which is not only an autobiography, but an appeal for fair play and greater liberty in our society by the Reverend founder of the denomination I'm in the process of transferring my clergy credentials to, Metropolitan Community Church, the Reverend Troy Parry, who was one of the civil rights leaders when all of that was kicking off in America, entitled Don't Be Afraid Anymore. Obviously, LGBTQ rights, I can't remember all the letters now, do forgive me, were part of the thrust for greater liberty and greater understanding in our society. And it just seemed appropriate today to think of a book that personally I found very uplifting and a call to greater personal courage. Let's live our own lives, get out of each other's hair, and be respectful and honorable to each other along the way. That's what liberty means to me, and that's why we have to constantly push for not only greater freedom in my mind, but look at those works of art which express that endeavor, which personify that glorious human crusade. My friends, it's been a great pleasure meeting you all. I see the old reprobate Andrew Withers has vanished off my screen as well, but it's been a great pleasure meeting you all. And as I say, I'll invite all of you back for a much longer individual session in the months ahead, because each and every one of you has a great deal to say about global text and that huge treasury of human thought known as literature. God bless everyone. God bless our listeners. God bless you all, and have a very fine day. Take care.
Take care. Bye now.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye, everybody.